you remember, if we discussed David's reaction to Naval's very coarse behavior of, I would say, not only a lack of hakarat hatov, but a true disdain for David. We're going to see how David responds to this. I can quickly review, and then we're going to take a look at Abigail. And because of also just internet connections, I'm going to share with you the same sheet as last week that you should all have. But in addition, we're also going to, and you'll see that I added to it, and Be'ezrat Hashem, I'll send this out as soon as my internet is actually working full time. So, and with, there we go, 1 second, just about to share. Okay, so some of this, again, quick chazara, as we take a look at David and Naval. And we saw the name, the plays on the names, and then we saw, if you remember, David's reaction, and which, on one hand, knowing that Naval and Lavan are similar, we're waiting for a Yaakov reaction, maybe, but actually we see more of a belligerent Esav reaction. And not only do we see, here we go, an Esav reaction, but we also get a sense, okay, just going down, and to David's reaction over here. Again, how could it be that I watched your sheep? We had this unwritten contract, and therefore we said that really in a court of law, it seems that Naval would probably win, and in the sense of, again, trying to, oh, I can't do it now. Yeah, Naval would probably win in this court of law because there wasn't a written contract, but it was very understood. Just like we said between Amalek and Midian, that there was this symbiotic relationship between them. So too, that's what David was expecting. You know, I'll take care of you. I will risk my life. My men will protect you as well. And we're going to receive at least something in return. And now that you have so much, now that you're in the middle of all your sheep shearing, which we said is a very wealthy time, then this can be a wonderful opportunity to finally pay me back for everything that I've done. So David says, now it's time for everyone, take his sword. Everyone did, and David says, you see, and Hashem did all of this in order to hand me my enemies. Now, even as we hear these words coming out of David, we're a little shocked over here in the sense of you just said to Shaul that Hashem doesn't want you to kill Shaul, and Shaul is really pursuing you. Habal lahargacha, hashkem lahargo. And if you remember, it was the men around him who were encouraging him. No one's encouraging David to kill Naval over here. And not only that, but Naval doesn't want to kill him. It's true that he's now providing for him. So we see that David is acting much more, as we said, more like the Esav reactions, coming and immediately trying to take what he feels is rightfully his, again, so to speak, his bracha. And that's why you have 400 men, and the idea of appearing before him. And sure enough, Chazal are going to teach us as well, telling us that, yes, this is a case where David really is Admoni. He really is reddish, like Esav. So now we're going to finally pay attention to Abigail. We already began discussing last week how she's going to respond, namely what she's going to be bringing to David. So we're going to continue with this now inside the Psukim. So Abigail now is going to be the one who actually prevents David from sinning with unnecessary bloodshed. How is she going to do this? And we're going to see certain strategies, just as we've been trying to pay attention to different devices of a Navi, so too strategies that Abigail employs in order to convince David to change his plans. So let's take a look. And firstly, what is it that Abigail is going to bring? And we see, and here we go. And David's reaction, David and Esav. Okay, Abigail is going to bring the loaves and the wine and the sheep and bread. Again, order, what's going on. We're looking firstly at the food that Abigail brings together with the words that are used in order to show us in the words of the Navi and what Abigail's present is. So let's just go back for a minute and remind ourselves from Pasuk Yud Aleph, as you see what it is that David had asked of Naval. And the words actually used by Naval, I should say, and when he refused what David had requested in Pasuk Yud Aleph, what does Naval say? Should I take my bread, my water, my flesh, meaning my animal meat that I have killed for my shearers, and give it unto men of whom I know not whence where they are? And why should I do this? This really all belongs to me. That's very nice that David wanted to protect my people, but why should I be the one to forfeit of my food? So take a look. What Naval had refused to give David, apparently, Abigail takes all that, giving us the impression maybe she was in the background, maybe someone told her. This is what Naval isn't giving David, but she adds significantly. She adds corn, she adds raisins, she adds figs, and notice all this. She sends a very generous gift. So we'll call this even stage number 1. Here it's actually, ironically, Abigail, who reminds us more of Yaakov Avinu, right? With the mincha, if you remember, of Yaakov to Esav. And therefore, she's going to be the one to compensate over here with a very, very generous gift, clearly, just like Yaakov does it, ulai yimsachin. She does this just like Yaakov did for Esav in order to appease David. Now later, again, we're going to see this right now, and when Abigail actually meets David, here we go, psukim chaf gimel chaf daled, falling at his feet, and then she's going to act, this we'll call strategy number 2, again, complete submission, in obviously contrast to the very audacious attitude of Naval. So let's take a look again within the psukim themselves at some of the words even that Abigail is going to consistently use. And this is also going to remind us of Yaakov in Parshat Vayishlach, same idea of referring to himself as an Eved and Esav is the Adon. So again, Pasuk Chaf Hey, or let's even go to Pasuk Chaf Daled. Again, when she falls at his feet, she says, Ushma et divrei amatacha. She's going to repeatedly refer to herself as the Amma, as the maidservant. Al na yasim adoni et libo, elish hablial hazeh, al naval ki kishmo kenhu. Again, these are really Shmuel Hanavi's words, or Shmuel's Talmud's words, using that term that we said of, oh my gosh, he really is like his name. This is his own wife saying this. He really is a Naval, and we said even though Naval could have meant, wise one, but obviously also has all the connotations of Nevela, something disgusting. Naval Shmo unavala imo, va'ni amatcha, but I'm not him. I'm your Amma, lo ra'iti et narei adoni asher shalachta, and I didn't see, and your servants when you sent them, your men. So what is she implying? Had I heard your request, then of course I would have done something. I would have spoken to Naval. I would have given you all this on the spot. Vata Adoni chai Hashem v'chei nafshecha asher menacha Hashem mibo b'damim. And notice this is going to be her third strategy. So not only is she going to exercise measures of submission, and clearly in contrast again to the, as we said, the chutzpah of Naval. But even after all this, we continue within the psukim, as you see, and we note that Abigail is going to open up with a speech probably, again, yeah, I always imagine the butterflies in her stomach. This is a speech that's going to determine whether or not she stays alive or not, because David is on a war path right now. But looking again back at the psukim, in all these psukim, again, she's pleading for her life and that of her family. And as we said, she's going to be employing the terms of Hashem, Hashem, Hashem. She says, again, don't let this be a sin upon you. Again, don't let Naval get the better of you. Don't be like Naval. He's the bad one. And then she doesn't even stop by mentioning Hashem, bringing HaKadosh Baruch Hu into the picture, which we're going to get back to in just a minute. But even more, notice this terminology that we use. For someone connected to life, you should be connected to life. You shouldn't be going out and killing people. And anyone who's pursuing you, don't worry, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take care of. We're going to see the term that she uses. Again, like he shall sling out from a kela, again, from a sling. You all know, what is she making reference to? Hashem will take care of the enemies through a sling. When
David
was the
with
last time we saw a
Goliath.
Killa? Excellent. David and Goliath. It's beautiful. She basically is saying, isn't that like enough of a message for you? David, did you forget about your encounter with Goliath? Right? That's where you are the one to say, you fight the wars of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Is this the war of Hashem that you're fighting right now? Then, because if it is a war of Hashem, says if it really is a war of Hashem, don't worry. Just like Hashem took care of Goliath, Hashem will take care of Nabal. But if it's not a war of Hashem, then you should really not be engaged in this. Notice brilliantly then and what she's saying over here. And this really is a very, very powerful term, and wherein she is going to be using terminology and over and over again with regard to, and I'm going to divide it up in just a second, but here we see her beautiful terminology, which is meant to prevent David, obviously, from going off and killing her entire household. So after her initial preparatory steps of submission, she is now going to talk about the role of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in all of this. So that's the last part of her speech, and ending with after the Kala V'hayaki Asa Hashem Ladoni K'chol Asher Diberet Hatovai Lacha V'tzavcha L'nagid Al Yisrael. And then she doesn't even spare these last words. She says, not to worry. Take a look at this. And because it shall come to pass when Hashem has done all the good, and you will be appointed prince, basically the king of Yisrael. So chaval that this should be basically a stumbling block for you, right? Chaval that this should be like a negative pretense for your behavior. This is not what's going to advance you to be king. So let's take a look. And basically, we're going to divide what Abigail says into themes. Number one, she submits herself, accepts upon herself and responsibility, but at the same time justifies herself with the argument that she had not seen David's young men. Meaning, why should I be guilty? Why should so many of our household be guilty? We weren't there. The very bringing of the blessing, she says, okay, if this is what you wanted, now you have it. So number one, she basically is saying, this is a very rash response of yours, David. Like, give us a chance. And don't just go to Naval. There are other people there. So this in itself, and this matana should in itself repair, or I should say, abate David's wrath. Number one. Number two, she says, okay, you want to go and kill Naval because he's so bad. Now notice that, what is she afraid of? She's afraid that if he kills Naval, obviously he's going to kill, the rest of them. And also, even if he just goes to kill Naval, and then so many people who are dependent on Naval are just going to starve. They won't have a homestead, and they won't have any level of security. So what Abigail basically does is, after saving the innocent people in Beit Naval, she goes on to number two. Theme number two is even Naval isn't worthwhile killing, right? Even he's not worthy of discussion. Naval kishmo kenhu. And then Abigail number three emphasizes that if David does kill Naval, it won't just affect the household of Naval, it won't just affect Naval, it will affect David, who in the end will suffer because it's inappropriate for the eventual king to have this unnecessary bloodshed on his resume, right? Basically, to have this as part of the resume. And the reason why this is also so significant is because we're now going to take a look and see, how does she accomplish this? And once we see her, I'm going to say, her basic three themes, then the question is, how is she going to actually relay it? What are some of the literary techniques, or I should say maybe even psychological techniques? So we saw some of them already. Number one, Abigail referring to David over and over again as Adoni. Adoni, notice 14 times. And that's why I try to emphasize it, reading the psukim 7 times. She also mentions the name of Hashem. And in this way, she basically is showing she is submissive to David, in addition to obviously the centrality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Amatacha, Amatacha, she mentions 5 times. But what's also interesting is that Abigail refers to not just the past, like the Kela, but really she's talking about future events, but she talks about them as if she already knows them, right? That, okay, you shall be king, you will be king. How does she know all this? And basically, and what we're explaining over here is, even when she says, Hashem, again, your soul lives, Hashem has withheld, Hashem has stopped you from basically spilling blood and from finding and redress for yourself and for your own hand. Basically, Abigail talks, and this is a brilliant psychological method to talk to someone as if he already decided that, right? Meaning it's a way of saying, wow, again, like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Isn't
Wow.
Abigail one of the Sheva Neviot?
Yes, we're going to see where that's going to be manifest. Thank you, Cookie. Yafe ma'od. But here, this isn't so much when she says, that, okay, I swear in the name of God for you not having spilled blood. That's not like a nevuah because it hasn't really happened. Basically, she's saying, come on, I know you have it in you not to do this. In other words, Abigail relates to David as if he's already decided not to kill him. And this is, we know, like talking to our kids this way as well. And I say, oh my gosh, you're going to do so well on the test, right? Or yesher koch for doing well. You might didn't take it yet. I know, but you're going to take the test and you're going to do well. And that's exactly, it really does strengthen your resolve. And that's why she's doing this. And your enemy should seek no evil. But wait a second, he did already seek evil, Naval. But again, she's talking as if he's already been punished, because not just out of confidence, but she's alluding to David's personality. Come on, I know what you're really capable of. And you're capable of overcoming this. You're capable of showing restraints. You're capable of royalty. And therefore, together with that, though, you may say that Abigail is just doing this out of defense, but no, she understands David. She's also simultaneously expressing empathy, true empathy for David's situation. She says, I know that an Adam, she uses the word Adam, I know that a man has risen up to pursue you, so you must be in like a terrible situation, like everyone is out to get you now. And she says it because she knows she doesn't mean Naval here. Here she means Shaul, but without saying Shaul, because that would be a little derogatory as well, both to Shaul and to David. So the very term that David used, turning to Shaul, is a term that she's going to use. So that's why Chazal say, wow, how do you know this? But again, this is a Navi who's writing these words and is explaining that she just has this basic sensitivity, and how she described to us at the very beginning, Tovat Seichel. And she knows it doesn't necessarily mean she would score whatever it is on her psychometry. But again, it does mean that she has a certain wisdom of human nature. People go to her for psychological counsel because she gets it. And as she understands, she says, I know where you are right now. David, I know that this Adam is bothering you. And therefore, basically, she's saying, don't let any Adam, whether it's Naval right now or Shaul, don't let them and change your nature, right? So again, the ideas here, again, Becky is saying as well, there's a midrash that Abigail brought and a bedika of her blood to show that just as you can't judge blood at night, again, don't do anything rash to Naval, and in the sense of don't, wait till the next morning, right? We don't paskin halacha at night, which is, again, the Chazal's way of extrapolating even these ideas. And the ideas, as we said numerous times, of her very sensitive nature. And at the same time, I don't want to use the term, I'm trying to stay away from manipulative, right? But she's not trying to chas v'shalom change the course of his heart, but trying to get him to see things that sometimes in a state of anger you just don't see. And that's why, again, she uses the same words that David uses towards Shaul. Now, notice perhaps number 5, which is the most significant, which is Abigail never explicitly says, and she never says, okay, don't kill me, right? Isn't that interesting? She never says, don't kill Naval because, or don't kill Naval because then all these innocent people are going to be killed. Why doesn't she say that? And so she hides this whole time, talking about how killing Naval would constitute unnecessary bloodshed. And instead, again, she talks about blessings, and she never states explicitly what she wants or doesn't want David to do, which is brilliant. And this way, she avoids forcing David to face this argument. She basically says, okay, you take a look at the situation and notice then how brilliant this is from every perspective over here. And there are numerous, by the way. If we were paying even more attention to this, there are so many parallels between these stories and other stories of David that are going to come up. but we're not going to, in other words, we're going to see that these, what Cookie called Nevuot of Abigail, are all going to come true. And the Navi is going to go out of his way to show us how even future stories of David and are going to remind us of this. Just to mention one, for example, in Mered of Shalom, and following the death of Shalom, when David is extremely distraught, the Ish HaKushi who goes to tell David about the outcome of the war, he uses these terms as well. And the enemies of the king that rise against you. And even though he's talking about Avshalom, and the whole point is to appreciate that just like Avshalom doesn't have the power to hurt you anymore, so too he's referring back to just as Naval doesn't have the power to hurt you anymore. So, and the Navi is comparing Avshalom to Naval, and so Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll get to that story a little later on. But this story you do know, and therefore we're going to pay attention to this now, and that is how the Navi is also, especially this is Shmuel, who also wrote Sefer Ruth, how he's going out of his way, and we're going to see numerous parallels, correspondences, again, between Abigail and David's own great-grandmother. So what's interesting, again, it seems that Ruth was written, as we know, basically around the same time as Sefer Shmuel, even more than Sefer Shoftim. It seems that it was Shoftim and then maybe Shmuel and Ruth, or Ruth and Shmuel, but all of these comparisons are going to be very significant, both in the narrative and certainly with regard to their personalities, especially this encounter, again, this nighttime encounter between Abigail and David reminds you of the nighttime encounter between Ruth and Boaz in the Goren. So let's get started, and we're going to see this is really remarkable. And such a sheer in and of itself. And in both stories, a woman expresses her respect. It's exactly the same words. How is it done? She falls on her face and bows herself to the ground. Now you're going to say, well, that's always a sign of respect, but Ruth and Abigail are the only women in all of Tanakh about whom we find that they fall on their face. Very interesting. They're also the only two women in Tanakh who hint to a man about their desire to marry him. Ruth says, and this term, and people even confuse the terms that they use, I am Ruth, your shivcha, right? Similarly, Abigail says, again, this is going to be the very end, and then remember your handmaid. And Chazal say in both cases, and Vanochi lo ke'achad shevchatecha, right? That both, when Ruth and Abigail both say, and I am like a handmaid, why did they say it that way? And that's basically say, I don't expect to always stay your handmaid. Hint, 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 you know, I think you should marry me. So very, very interesting to see the terminology. In both cases, the man blesses the woman for the good that she did, with also the exact same language, which again, shouldn't bother us because then it's the same author, or again, the same style of authorship on purpose, right? It's the Navi who's telling us, please look at these stories and realize that I want you to see all the parallels between them. And both of them are blessed in the same terminology. The formulation also doesn't appear anywhere else in all of Tanakh. And number 4, the 2 stories end with a marriage. What do you know? Again, that's exactly what happens soon thereafter. And I would say, also difficult to ignore, another expression that only appears in these 2 stories. Just like Boaz turns to his young men and tells them, don't tachlimuha, do not reproach or basically embarrass her. The same wording is found in David's words to Naval, and then in what David says, then the words, of Naval's young men to Abigail, we did not remember, and then said, yes, we did not hurt them, and we were not hurt. So we find the same words over here that are going to be used, basically showing that David, just like his great-grandmother and his great-grandfather, both went out of their way not to hurt people, even if there was a pretense for hurt, or even if there wasn't really a reason not to hurt. But both incidents take place, what do you know, during sheep shearing festival, basically harvesting season. Then they're just a few weeks apart. And so we find the various parallels over here, which in fact are, are beautiful. There are also different expressions that we find in this story that are going to be found in other stories, particularly we said of David, and especially when it comes to women. For example, the Isha from Tekoa that we're going to see also falls to the ground, not with the term of pana, of paneha, of her face, but rather apeha, that her nose, so to speak, falls to the ground. But we do find, again, also Elisha and the Shashunami, meaning other women are going to be compared, but none as closely as Abigail and Ruth. And I think the parallels, or the significance of the parallels, is quite obvious, trying to show that the Tanakh is answering, I would say, a question that we should all have, because immediately thereafter, and David is going to tell Abigail, look at Pasuk Lamed Bet, Baruch Hashem Elokei Yisrael, Asher Shlechech Hayom Hazeh Likrati. So what David is basically going to say, okay, that's it, I'm stopping. And why did David respond so quickly this way, right? What does it mean? And what does it mean also when he says, Uvaruch ta'amech bruchaat, just like bruchat la Hashem of Boaz, Asher klitini hayom hazeh mibo b'damim v'hoshei yadili. Olam chai Hashem Elokei Yisrael Asher menani mehara otach kilulei mihart tavot lekrati kim notar lenaval ad or haboker mashtim bakir. I'm going to get back to this terminology as well. And he says, had not been for you, by the morning, Naval would have been gone. So now we understand the idea of both schut avot, and I'm going to remark here, schut imachot, right? That this is really, it seems, what comes to David's rescue. That it's really in reward for his great-grandmother, in reward for Ruth's acts of kindness and humility. And that's why her great-grandson is saved and safe from doing evil by a woman who is so similar to Ruth. Basically, Chazal, as you know, explained by Ruth, what is the point of Sefer Ruth? So when we're young, we're always taught to teach us chesed, chesed. Chazal saying, no, that's not the point. The point is to teach you kama sachar tov legomlei chasadim, to teach you the long-term effects of chesed that you don't even know about. Right? When you perform a little act, you don't know how this is going to have an effect on your great-great-grandchildren, but it will. And it's not just the genetic material that's going to manifest itself. It's going to be Hashem, it doesn't forget chesed. Chesed is paid forward over and over and over because of Boaz's kindness to Ruth. It's almost as if Ruth is going to pay back Boaz's grandson. And by the way, they're both from Yehuda, right? And that's exactly what happens. We have someone who is going to display the same tzniut, the same submission, the same wisdom, really, as Ruth, and that's how David will be saved. Can you imagine what would have happened had David wiped out the house of Naval? That would have been like wiping out the people of Nov. Maybe not as bad, not Kohanim, and David would have justified, but to have that bloodshed on his hands, that's not legal blood. And this is very, very significant. So now we can finally move to the end of the story. After David blesses Abigail, Anna says, yeah, it's a good thing you came, because otherwise it would have been mashtin bakir. Remember we discussed last time the dog terminology that goes on over here, that the dog is most belittled, and part of it is because the Plishtim actually worship dogs. So the term of mashtin bakir is a reference to dogs. By the next morning, he would have really been like Naval, Lavan, and like Kilavi. He would have been like a Kilev, and who just urinates by the wall. So some of the Parshan will explain Mashtim Bakir. It's really just a way of talking about something going to waste and completely annihilated. He took her gift and he said, you go back home. Don't worry, your panim paid off. Think about this. Abigail, that Naval is still in the midst of his mishteh. Now, by the way, a mishteh doesn't just mean a party. A mishteh comes from the term of shtiya. And he's getting drunk, mishteh hamelech, as if he's a king. V'leiv Naval, and there are so many plays on the words here. Naval, leiv, the same letters. Tovalav. V'hu shikor ad ma'od, v'lo higidalo davar katon v'gadol ad or haboker. And she doesn't say anything to him because he's so inebriated right now. So she waits until the next morning. That's when she tells him these things. Again, what does it mean, these things? And that's when she shares with him, as we see, Anna, his wife, told him the things of, oh, you should know that David was on his way to slaughter you. And I brought, in case you're wondering why there's things missing in the pantry, it's because I took them out in order to give him, because otherwise you would have been dead. And imagine this, imagine like hearing this from your wife, which by the way, is a recurring theme. We've discussed this in the themes of Shmuel, that the woman is the one who stands up, and Elkanah disappears from the story. Hannah becomes the central character. You see this in the time, obviously, of Barak and Zvorah, that it's going to consistently be the vatakam of the woman. And here we see this as well. And then what happens? As Naval hears this, Vayamat libo bikirbo, v'hu haya la'avim. And then his heart died and he became a stone. What does this mean? So most of the Parshanim explain, wow, this is really, it sounds like, a heart attack. But let's try to understand it a little more. And firstly, this is the first time since the beginning of the story where we find HaKadosh Baruch Hu getting involved. Right? Hashem is basically going to be the one to bring death upon Naval, which is exactly what Abigail had said. And now we're going to see the way that Naval dies. And the Navi obviously believes that this is an important point for us to see, not only that he dies, right? The Navi could have just told us in, Vayamat Naval, because that's exactly what ends up happening. But instead, we hear stage number one, Naval is drunk at a feast of a king, right? Basically, first you need to hear, right before his death, you need to hear about Naval's arrogance, which is unrestrained, right? He basically is taking his food and here you find conspicuous consumption. Again, just the constant eating, and the arrogance, the lack of any restrictions. And Abigail is the foil to Naval over here. And she understands that it's not right to talk to him when he's drunk because he's not going to internalize anything. And therefore she waits until morning, until he's sober. And then she goes and speaks to him. And there seems to be an unexpected response. His heart died within him and he became a stone. So in fact, all the Parshanim ask, and what is this, right? What's so terrible about what Abigail said? If anything, he should be relieved. Again, that, oh my gosh, thank you so much for saving my life. So Rashi says, then what does it mean that Vayamat libo bikirbo, a strange terminology, his heart died within him, that he was so distressed, ready for this? He was so distressed about the present that Abigail had given David. And when she said, oh, I had to take out some things from the pantry, that bothered him so much. He couldn't tolerate the fact that Abigail gave something, even if it meant that it was at the cost of his life. In other words, according to Rashi, Naval would have been better off, in his mind, had David come to attack, and he would have lost some lives. David's army would have lost some lives. And here we see a strange explanation over here, and which is so, I would say, stark. Right? It basically is emphasizing just how miserly Naval is, right? That's what he can't accept. His heart stops to function when he hears about the gift that Abigail gave. And the mitzvah that David also says that what was it? Again, what I would say is closer to Pshat. He was filled with fear about David's army coming. And that definitely makes a lot of sense. But let's take a look at the broader picture of what's going on over here. And maybe what Abigail, just like Abigail came and spoke to David in a very wise manner, and this way stopped David's, onslaught. Had it not been for Abigail, and obvious for being so different than Naval, we know that David's attack probably would have wiped out the entire house of Naval and the entire family as well. So we don't know. Maybe Abigail said it also in such a way, just like by David, it elicited a response of tshuva, right? She basically told David, why would you want this blood on your hands? Meaning it's not a war of God. Don't worry, if it's a war of God, Hashem will take care of it. And in the end, Hashem did take care of it. And David said, oh my gosh, you're right. Like I was going to kill innocent people. What was I thinking? And maybe Abigail said it in such a way, and we wouldn't be surprised if she did. But again, the story is not about Naval, it's about David. But maybe she said it in such a way, Vayamat libo bikirbo, that Naval also responded with tshuva, that all of a sudden it hit him, oh my gosh, I have been a horrific person. And that's what, and maybe one could call this like his, near death tshuva over here, literally on his deathbed, feeling a sense of a frustration. And yes, now I see that you did Spiro raise her hand. Thank you, you did. Yes,
Unmute.
please.
Shani, first of all, good morning. Do
Good
we
morning.
think that possibly Naval was jealous at that moment? Like,
יפה מאוד. יפה. Could,
you know,
yes
not
and
just,
no. Meaning,
yeah,
yes and no, because we're thinking, okay, in the end, David is going to marry Abigail, but during those times, and your wife wouldn't do that, or he jealous of David, meaning over Abigail, meaning he sees what Abigail did really as a life-saving technique. So difficult to say that, even though we know that Abigail is also beautiful. So maybe he's fearing the worst in his mind, right? That could also be, right? That, and he hears, oh my gosh, you went out to David? Oh no, and then starts suspecting terrible things. So,
yes,
okay, could be. And maybe, again, it's interesting, Hadassah is bringing up also that Tamar is similar, in the Yehuda and Tamar scene, doing something a little suspicious, ultimately, in order to bring about life, to save life. So
right.
there could be that. And, I'm, and I always say I'm a little reserved whenever it comes to, again, like looking out or like seeking sexual connotations. If they're there, usually they're very clear, right? So even Chazal, when they say v'zacharta et amatecha, which could just mean like remember your maidservant and don't kill me, it could definitely mean that. Chazal say no, she's hinting, remember me, so that like when all this is over, like give me a call. And so, and there definitely is that illusion, 100%, but I'm not so sure how dominant it is over here.
Okay.
But
Okay.
and I wouldn't put it past Naval knowing a little bit about how the Navi is depicting his personality. So that's an excellent point.
He may have thought it was an exaggerated response on her part. Like, what did you give him all that for? And if you gave him all that, there must be maybe something's going on here.
Interesting. Even though, you wonder like how much this seems to be the first encounter between the two of them. And not so much so that she needs someone to direct her, like, where is David's camp? But the Radak says that, meaning not how, but he said, I can't believe you gave him all that. I can't believe it. So not so much about, I can't believe you went out to him and is something going on between the two of you. And as much as, again, so we have to be careful. Oh, what is it? What's her name? Who wrote David's harp? And, the author, she writes beautifully. So she wrote a book, David's Harp, and she talks about how Abigail, and it really is, again, not seductive, but just very wise. Like she is the resident psychologist in David's court, and David always goes to her, to seek advice as the right thing to do. So it could be that, this is where the whole idea starts from, that he's definitely, let's say, wait a second, are you offering like free counsel to David during this time? So maybe there is something, but I think it's even more than that, that he knows that Abigail has this very special power of being able to understand human nature. And maybe it's that she's doing this on purpose to arouse Naval's anger right now, or because she's really trying to get him to do tshuva. So interestingly, Tzipor also said, "Vayamat libo b'kerbo vayhi la'aven," reminds us very much of Paro. Vayachazik et libo, vayichbad et libo. Again, ke'even, 100%. You're supposed to see Naval in a very negative terminology, very similar to Paro, beautiful. And we also hear, Becky's right, in the backgrounds of our minds, the remnants of Nov, and that's how they were destroyed, because they also gave food to David. And we discussed this, right? That maybe that's why Naval also doesn't, not that he's a Shaul supporter, but if he gives David food, and of course he knows who David is, but he's afraid of giving David food. Why should I get intertwined, or tangled up in your and Shaul's affairs? And yet Abigail is going to. And she says, I know that you're in the right. I know that Shaul is in the wrong. I know that he's the Adam that's pursuing you. And notice how much psychology is here. We could really spend this entire year talking about almost every other word of Abigail. How she's so brilliant that in the sense that she says, I know where you're coming from, right? And sometimes we have to say that to a person. She doesn't say, how can you do this, right? Because then David would get defensive. She says, I understand exactly why you're doing this. And I know the state in which you are. And she says, you're right. Naval kishmo kenhu. I'll be the one to say it, right? He's even worse than you think. But then she says, but don't be bothered by the Adam. And she says it that way. It's not just Naval. Don't be bothered by Shaul. She says, I know that you're in an agitated state. It's like telling my kids. And I'm sure that you as parents also, turn and say, all of a sudden your child is like getting very uptight and very irritable about little things here and there. You just have to say, I know something's bothering you. And I know. And therefore I know that this isn't really who you are. Meaning you're just responding because you've had a bad day and you're in a bad mental state. And Abigail says, you're right. And that's okay. That's okay. She validates those feelings. Meaning you have a right to feel like a fugitive all the time. You have a right to feel that like everyone's out to get you. She says, I get it. And I understand. And you're right. Everyone is out to get you. But don't you see that time and time again, Hashem is protecting you. So why not leave this one up to God as well? Right? Such a
Could be that Abigail really did understand because she was in an abusive relationship.
Very nice. So then we get to that part of the story, which we don't, hear. I agree, Cookie. You should. I even read. I love historical novels, and I'm forgetting it's next to my bed, even a book called Abigail, and that's exactly what it's about. It's about meaning the historical fiction of filling in the lacunae that her mother dies young, and the father just wants her. She's not from a wealthy background, so the father just wants her taken care of. So he gives her to this guy Naval, and everyone says, "Wow, this really isn't a good shidduch, but he'll take good care of you, meaning he'll provide for you." And sure enough, this idea of the idea of being in an abusive relationship, and now we don't know that, meaning as far as we know, he's taking good care of her, right? He's a very wealthy man, and she's taken care of, and relationships then were not exactly.
Yeah, but if she says kishmo kenu, then she understands that that's the truth.
Yes, meaning and someone who has such a personality, I can imagine. I agree with Cookie. I can imagine that, and that it definitely manifests itself in other ways. Then, did he beat her up at night? And maybe, but the Navi says, okay, we're not even. It's enough to know that he has this nature, and the very fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gets involved and kills him, right, tells us there's a lot of midah connected midah over here, and that's why. And when we look at the fuller picture of the story, we understand that not only is it Abigail stopped David from killing, but had it not been for Abigail, take a look at this, then David would have wiped out Naval, and David then would have, basically everyone would have said, oh my gosh, David killed out almost like the people of Shechem, right? Look at what Shimon and Levi did. And instead, what Yaakov says is, don't you see, hopefully people are looking at me as bad. They should have looked at the people of Shechem as bad. And the same thing, Abigail said to David, you're going to come out of this. If you go and kill, you're going to come out blemished. Here, not only does David in the end take the high ground, but now there's an opportunity really for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to get involved with, which only corroborates how evil Naval is, right? Everyone see this, meaning this is a way of showing that it's really about Naval. Were it not been for Abigail, and we wouldn't have known whether or not Naval really deserved to die. And that question would have remained. So now we know for sure, and that yes, then Naval is really bad. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to kill him. And that's why I take a look at the Gemara, again, back to our screen over here. Take a look at the Gemara. Again, we're going to see in Rosh Hashanah where Chazal say that when did this happen? Take a look at the very next pasuk. Firstly, pasuk lamed chet, vayhi haseret hayamim, vayigov Hashem et Naval vayamot. Hashem struck Naval after 10 days. Chazal say, Rav Nachman said in the name of Rabbi Baravu, these are the 10 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. These are the Aseret Yumei Teshuvah. And it's so interesting because there are different allusions throughout Tanakh to 10 days here, 10 days there. And each time Chazal say, yes, these are 10 days of Teshuvah. What are Chazal trying to tell us over here? Basically, they're saying, do you see how Hashem got involved? Hashem got so involved that Hashem actually, even though he had a heart attack of some type, and Hashem gave Naval 10 days to complete a process of Teshuvah. And therefore, Chazal saw these days as opportune days, in fact, for tshuva. But Naval apparently did not learn the lesson of Aser to Tshuva, did not, maybe initially he went into shock, but he did not change his way in any significant ways. And therefore, it could very well be that maybe when the initial shock wore off, Naval returned to his everyday, I would say, despicable conduct. And that's why Hashem killed him off. And so we see these ideas and over again. And Shira made an excellent point as well that Yecheskel, Nevat Yecheskel, he talks about a leiv basar, a human flesh turning into a leiv shel even, right? And you know the famous, right, the Avanim of Yerushalayim, they're not just a leiv shel even, but rather a leiv basar. And now that here we see as well, Naval, right, Naval with the leiv, he switches nun bet lamed, he switches a leiv into bet lamed. Right? And not only that, but he reverses the process. He takes what should be a sensitive heart and he makes it into a very stoic heart. Right? And it seems that, yes, Becky is pointing out that David later on is going to forget this when he kills Uriah. So we don't know that yet, don't know it yet. So we're going to wait till we get to that story. But now we're going to end with the epilogue of this story. Very interesting epilogue. And it's not enough to hear that Naval is going to die. Rather, we're going to hear something else as well. And I'll take a look at this and we'll see why apparently this is not just me in Pasuk Lamed, but even the psukim that we're going to hear afterwards. And that the story, this very dramatic story, a story of potential bloodshed that really could have ended in a horrific way, ends on a very, very festive note. וישמע דוד כמת נבל, ויאמר ברוך השם אשר רב את ריב חרפתי מיין נבל ואת עבדו חסך מרעה, ואת רעת נבל השיב השם בראשו, וישלח דוד וידבר באביגיל לקחתה לו לאישה. Wow, that's really quick. This is all one pasuk. And not just one pasuk, but yes, we also have numerous Mizmorei Tehillim that refer to this as well, meaning both David and being thankful that Hashem has saved him through Abigail from bloodshed, but also that, wow, this ended up so happily ever after. He says, wow, blessed be Hashem, and who saved me from my own embarrassment and from Naval, and that Hashem, that's number one, and that Hashem, that's a reference to Abigail, and that Hashem smote Naval. And he sees that it's really because of Abigail, and he wants to take Abigail as a wife. David על אביגיל הכרמלה וידברו אלה לאמור דוד שלחנו אלייך לקחתך לך לאישה. Pasuk Mem Aleph Vatakam, again, which as we said is a word that we find particularly used by women who respond in a positive way in the wake of the passivity of men. Again, Devorah, Hannah, Naomi, Vatakom, ותשתחו אפיים ארצה ותאמר הנה אמרתך לשבחה לרחוץ רגלי עבדי אדוני. I will hereby remain even a maidservant to David, my master, meaning that wasn't just a pretense, it wasn't a show that I was putting on the night of, 10 days earlier. No, that's really how I feel. I feel that David deserves all this honor. Who does she remind you of, by the way, getting up? Why do we have to hear that? Really, she rode
Rivka.
Beautiful, beautiful. Excellent. And she becomes his wife. And then we hear, just take a look at this also, Psukim, and Mem Gimel and Mem Dalid, we hear two really strange Psukim. And you should also know that he took Achinoam from Yisrael. Some Parshanim explain this is referring to Emek Yisrael all the way in the north, but most Parshanim explain no. This is a local area of Yisrael. Tatiana gam shtehen lo linashim. So notice that now he has these two wives, Anna Achinoam and Abigail, and then the very next pasuk, the Shaul natanet habito eshet David lapati galim. And you should know that Shaul had given Michal, who really is David's wife, he gave her to Palti ben Laish from Galim. Why do we need to hear about this? And wait a second, isn't that Asur? She's already an Eshiti. She can't just give her to a different man. So let's start to discuss this over here. Firstly, David, again, the reason why the story ends with David taking Abigail as wife in the same pasuk where he thanks Hashem is because the Navi wants us to know that David recognizes that it was the the tzidkut, the righteousness of Abigail, that enabled her to be saved, and that's the root of his desire to take her as a wife, right? Not because she's beautiful, which she is, not because she's super intelligent, which she is, not because of her psychology, but her, he was saved, right? That she is basically the root of his salvation, and therefore David thanks HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as we said also in his Moed Tehillim, for preventing him from sinning. In other words, he basically incorporates the exact same words that Abigail had employed. And so here in a very short account, you hear about really the greatness of Abigail in a very subtle way, which really talks about one other aspect of Abigail that is so parallel to Ruth, namely her tzniut, right? Her modesty. She doesn't say, everyone should just know I saved the day. And David recognizes that she saves the day, and that's enough. And she says, basically, I'm just a vehicle for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why the Navi does go out of his way by comparing her to Rivka, right? To know the kindness and certainly the modesty. So in this very short account, this is a beautiful literary device for the Navi to share with us and how special she is. Obviously, she doesn't see herself as deserving of marrying David. Oh, what do you mean? I'm just a maidservant. Nonetheless, again, the Navi is saying, oh, no, she is the perfect wife. And I hear the idea of continuing even David's natural line, the line of Ruth, the line of Tzniut, the line of Chesed, and are certainly part of the, I would say, the David stories. And she is going to be the one to remind us throughout David's career of David's sensitivity, or just like Becky said before, what should be his sensitivity to human life. And whenever he's not going to show that sensitivity, we're going to always revisit the story. That's an excellent point. Yes, Cookie.
Yeah. What Shaul did with Michal, he did the same thing with Meirav. This is the second time that he gave them away.
It's true, but with Meirav, and Meirav
they weren't married. They were just
married.
spoken about.
She was Mikudeshet, but not actually married yet. Michal is totally married. She's a full Ishatish.
Yes, so what was that?
Excellent. So this is what we're going to talk about right now. And so notice that first we have his marriage to Abigail, but that's still not the end. Again, then the Navi says, you need to know two more facts. You need to know that he also took Achinoam, and you need to know about Michal. So yes, then Cookie says, okay, why do we need to know this? And if we know this, like, shouldn't you give us more explanation over here? And this is, again, so troubling, 100%. So Achinoam of Yisrael. And then we hear, okay, now both of them are his wives, as we said. And here, again, we're supposed to understand this. Now take a look. David's marriage to Abigail is definitely portrayed in a very positive light. And whereas we're not sure why tell us about his marriage to Achinoam, we're not going to hear about all of his 18 wives, right? Meaning we know that he marries 18. So why do we hear about Achinoam? Take a look. The marriage to Achinoam is juxtaposed to Shaul giving Michal, his daughter, David's wife. These are the words that are used in the psukim. Again, Michal bito Eshet David. And maybe what the Navi is saying is, it's one thing, before you're a king, it's one thing to take Abigail as a wife. I get that from the story. Why do we get that from the story? She saved his life. She now doesn't have a husband to take care of her, right? David, that's the right thing to do. Take Abigail. But wait a second, you have a wife like waiting at home, and you're not a king, right? Meaning a king is allowed to take many wives, right? Not too many, right? David, maximum, and Chazal learned from David up to 18, right? As opposed to, as we know, the 300 wives, 700 concubines of Shlomo HaMelech. But let's go back to David for a minute. To take Abigail is one thing. Also take Achinoam when you have a wife back home. That's not right? And even though we know that bigamy is allowed in the Torah, we still see that it's not necessarily looked upon very positively. 2 wives in addition to Michal doesn't look good.
Shani, beside the point that he took another wife, if I'm not mistaken, Achinoam bat Achimatz was also Michal's mother and Meirav's mother. Which
Yafeh, meaning that's why
also Shaul's first wife, or Bechira, or whatever you want to call it.
That she was the Gvira. Beautiful. So again, what Chazal, and it's a way of saying that David is already assuming the kingship, meaning that's a beautiful midrash to highlight that there's a problem, that David is acting a little too much begava. By the way, to say that he took Abigail in addition to Michal, like, makes sense, because again, just like Michal saved his life, right, risked her life as Shaul's daughter. Please remember this, like, we're going to be very Michal sensitive here. Michal risked her life. We know that Shaul is ready to kill Yonatan for his alliance with David. Of course, he's ready to kill Michal for what she did. He doesn't, but don't put it past Shaul. And Michal knows that. She knows about the story of Yonatan eating. She knows that her brother was almost killed by her own father, and yet she still risks her life for David, and so does Abigail. So had the Navi said he took Abigail, in addition to Michal, that would have actually made a lot of sense. That David is a righteous person. He's paying people back for their selflessness, for their sacrifice. But to say that he took Abigail and then he took Achinon for no reason, right? That definitely then makes us wonder, and it really doesn't look it at all. And even though it seems from the pasuk that Shaul had already given Michal to Palti at an earlier point, because for Shaul Natan, as opposed to Vayitain Shaul, it's past perfect. So at some meaning he had given it, but still, then there seems to be this connection, either a moral conceptual one, maybe even, and this should bother us also, maybe he took Achinoam, meaning he took Abigail again for all the right reasons. He took Achinoam, like maybe even to cite Shaul for giving Michal to Palti ben Laish. But can we also talk about the story, just because, again, we're learning this as well. Let's think about this from Michal's perspective. And notice how Michal is called here. Everyone see her dual identities. She's Eshet David, and on one hand, or I should say she's Michal Bito on one hand and Eshet David on the other hand, right? Shaul's daughter and David's wife. And what's interesting is that we don't know exactly how Michal responded to this, but we could surmise that just like Yonatan, who also feels this internal struggle and ultimately chooses to listen to his father, even though he knows he's wrong, I can only perhaps surmise that Michal knows that this is wrong and yet doesn't resist because it doesn't pay to either. Again, we see almost a certain silence or a passive objection on the part of Michal. And also telling us, by the way, something very, very interesting, that in the end, there actually is a very positive. We're first going to pay attention to the pshat, and then we'll get to various midrashim. There seems to be, in the end, the development of a positive relationship between Michal and Palti. Where do we see this? Again, in Sefer Shmuel Bet Taragin, when David insists from Avner that he get Michal back, right? Basically as a sign that he's taking over the Malchut of Shaul. And we hear that Palti cries after Michal. And he literally is mourning her. We don't generally see this in Tanakh relationships. He's so sad. He's so distraught. And Chazal say actually that, but she was an Eshedish, that what he did is he put, like the Kruvim of Gan Eden, he put swords around her bed so that he would never touch her, wouldn't even touch her. So imagine this, like with the Midrash is saying, because you already see the respect that Palti has. And again, this is so interesting. And so what happened between the love of Perek Yudchet, the Vatohav Michal et David, remember she's the only one in Tanakh that says she loves David, she's obsessed with David. And then how could this be that just 7 chapters later, she's now married to Palti ben Laish? Again, it could very well be that we already know the roots of this development, that in Perek Yudchet, we saw that the love of Michal to David was very one-sided. Michal loves David, but David never loved Michal back. Right? And therefore, it's Michal who's dedicated to David. Michal, and you can imagine this, who risked her life, and she stands up to his father, and she loves David. And then what does David do? David leaves her, right? David, one can say, he severs this bond between them. And Shaul, and therefore what happens is that I can only imagine that Shaul's influence her over time becomes stronger and stronger, maybe she really does, as the Navi depicts here, she first sees herself as Michal Bito. Michal becomes again the daughter of Shaul and only secondarily is David's wife. So even though, by the way, one can argue, what could she or should she have done, especially if we've already compared the story numerous times to Yaakov and Rachel? What could Michal have done when David ran away? David encourages Yonatan to run away with him. What could Michal have done? Also run away. So now you're supposed to say, but David didn't invite her to run away. Yeah, because he doesn't want her to risk her life. But if she, in the end, like Yonatan, she stays back. And she could have, like Rachel and Leah, who also ran away from their father. She could have run away, but she didn't. And we feel this tension, again, this tragic tension. So even though she risked her life, even though she helped David, she chose to stay at home and she didn't join David. And it could be that that was the choice that already ended her relationship with David. Maybe that was the choice that brought her to being allowed by her father to marry someone else. That was a fateful choice that impacted her. We're going to see that actually has effects on her until her dying day, which we're not going to get to now. But I do want to talk about then what Chazal say about all this. So Chazal say, how could it be? How could it be that Shaul does this? And how could it be that Shaul gave Michal to another man? This is Aser Mid'oraita. So don't worry, the Gemara Chazal are obviously bothered by this. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, I'm just going to read from Sanhedrin Yuted Amud Bet, raises different possibilities. According to one opinion, Shaul and David actually disagreed about the halacha, meaning they disagreed about one who's mekadesh a woman with a loan, right? Meaning with a loan, which generally means, again, with a lot of money, or as Rashi says, money, then what does it mean here? Michal was basically mekudeshet with a loan. What was the loan? Killing off not just Goliath, but all the other plishtim. Remember, he says, if you bring me mea or lo plishtim. So it could be that to be able to purchase someone with a loan, and maybe that's not a proper purchase because a loan isn't shava apruta. Basically, he says, if you do this, then you can marry my daughter. So even though he gave him, if you remember, 200 orlot of the plishtim, nonetheless, and it wasn't considered, you have to give something of value, right, at that moment, something, and certainly the orlot, the foreskins of the plishtim, are not worth even a pruta to us. And so Shaul said, okay, you were makadesh my daughter on a loan. So really, you're not really married. David said, according to the Gemara, excuse me, then I definitely did give enough as a pruta. And that's one explanation. Or that Shaul said that the Kiddushin was invalid for other reasons. Rabbi Yossi said, just as Michal's and Kiddushin to Palti was sinful, so too Meirav's to Adriel HaMecholati. So all of you saying, wait, he's already done this before. He also gave Meirav to someone else, which implies that there's no halachic justification. And even though Rashi tries to justify it, as we said, Rabbi Yossi said there's no justification. Shaul is wrong. He's overriding Yisurei to Oraita. And this is terrible, very harsh criticism. Shaul, the king of Yisrael, this is a sign of his gava. This is a way of asserting that he's stronger than David. He can take his wife. As we know, the wife, unfortunately, is sometimes a commodity of power. And so sure enough, he was trying to show David that he's really the one in charge. And that's why he did this, which means, oh my gosh, that's terrible, like playing with people's lives just because of your power. He says, well, then again, he killed the people of Nov, right? This shouldn't surprise you so much. And so Chazal say he was over on Avodah Zarah, and by killing Kohanim, and we're going to see Ba'alatov. He's over on Shfichut Damim, and killing the people of Nov, and he's over on Gilui Arayot, right? So here are the three cardinal sins that Chazal say that Shaul is going to be guilty of. Again, the very fact that he gave his daughter Michal, David's wife, to Palti, shows that he transgressed forbidden sexual relations. And later on, we're going to see he inquires of the Ba'alat Ov. Therefore, Chazal say that's why he's killed, and that's why his malchut was uprooted. This is also the suggestion of Rabbi Yosef Kaspi, a contemporary of Ibn Ezra. He says as follows. He says, it's not my habit to expound upon such questions and answers. How did Shaul do this? How did he give his own daughter to Palti? And because they knew what they did. And if this involved a sin for Shaul, then, okay, don't let it bother you so much that Shaul committed this terrible sin. How could Shaul do this? What do you mean? How could Shaul kill the people of Nov? How could Shaul not kill Amalek? Meaning, why are you so surprised, he says. And yes, it bothers us when people do wrong things, but don't be so surprised. This is just the Nevi's way of telling us that he did something else as well. Now, interestingly, and the Midrashim connect this very, very much with the story of Nov, right? For example, we know that, and it says that what happens, and I think Becky may have mentioned this before, that Doeg, remember Doeg, the Edomite said, wait a second, I just told you about David and Achimelech. I want to marry your daughter, right? So it was really Doeg who persuaded Shaul to annul the marriage of Michal David. And he said, again, Chazal say, because he had his own, pretense in mind, but he said that David is a morid b'malchut. So here's another explanation. Once you have a rebel of the king, then he's liable for mita, he's liable for the death penalty, and therefore it's as if he's dead. Once he's dead, then you can give Michal to another man. Namely, he wanted it to be for him, and his wife is permitted, and sure enough, then Shaul gives Michal to Palti ben Laish. Lastly, the Radak here also quotes the Gemara in Sanhedrin and says, this is all the pshat, meaning the pshat is Shaul did something wrong. He took a married woman and he gave her to Palti ben Laish from Galim, which we're also going to get back to. But he says, again, what's correct is that halachically, anytime a man goes off to war, again, this is told to us also in Masechet Gittin, he would give his wife a get. And just in case he didn't come back, David went off to war all the time. So I'm sure before David, especially knowing that Shaul is going to pursue him, that David gave Michal a get. And therefore, it was okay for Shaul to give Michal to someone else. And we also see that Shaul hates David after he married his daughter, to the point that David has to run away from Shaul, says the Radak. So when Shaul saw that David had run away, even though every once in a while he would come back, he forced him to give his daughter a get. And that basically Shaul made David give Michal a get so that she would not be an aguna, and he did this, and Shaul gave her as a wife to Palti, the son of Laish, which again seems to also tell us, even if he told David, look, you have to give your wife a get, he shouldn't have given her right away necessarily to someone else. But here we see, again, even according to the Radak, obviously this is all to shed negative light on Shaul, but it seems that there's also a little bit of, David, you kind of brought this upon yourself, and by virtue of the fact that you also took Achinoam over here. Now, last idea as well that I just wanted to make mention of over here is not only giving to Palti ben Laish, but also this idea of marrying different women from different areas. What is David doing? Meaning, why? If we say the pshat is not that he's trying to spite Shaul because Shaul had given Michal, as we said, that's how we've been explaining it until now. But what's another reason why he took Achinom of Yisrael? What did Abigail tell him? Abigail said, don't worry, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to fight your wars and you will be a Nagid of Yisrael. And David now realizes this is basically the second story where someone has told him from, beyond the realm of prophecy that he's going to be the king. Shaul said, yeah, you're going to be the king. And now, like even from I will call them even the proletariat members of society, Abigail says, yeah, like we all know that you're going to be king. So David now starts acting as king, or at least planting the roots of kingship, which this is fine for him to do. How does he plant the roots of kingship? He takes someone from Carmel and Abigail, and this way, anytime, as you know, marriages were not, I want to say we're generally not of the romantic sort, but really of the practical sort. And especially if you're talking about a king, then they also connoted alliances. And that's really what's going on over here. And that David is basically creating alliances with the people of Yehudah. So firstly with the people of Carmel, and then the people of Yisrael. So Carmel, as you know, is on the southeastern side, and Yisrael a little bit more towards the west. So he slowly but surely is once again expanding his allies. and his primary allies are going to be those from Yehuda. Again, the minority of Parshanim who say that she's from Yisrael. This would also be, again, a little harder to appreciate that someone from Yisrael would really marry into Yehuda. And again, that's the area of Menashe and Yisachar. Nonetheless, then it could be that David is already getting married, meaning as a result of the story of Abigail, he's going to start acting more and more as king, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And maybe that's why we find right afterwards the contrast with Shaul, the Palti B'Mayish. By the way, Chazal darshan his name Palti, that he saved himself from sin, once again by putting the swords around Ben Laish, the son of the basically of a lion, that he was mitgamber, that he was able to express restraint, sexual restraint, but also he was also a skilled swordsman, that he also was a good soldier. And Asher Migalim. And at Galim, we're not exactly sure where this area is, but we're going to see that when Michal is returned, and he runs after all the way from the areas of Bachurim and Almon. So it seems that Galim is somewhere, and this is very interesting, somewhere near the eastern side of Yerushalayim, meaning the areas of Midbar Yehuda, and Galim, perhaps even near Gilgal, which means that what is Shaul doing? He's giving his own wife, his own daughter, with someone from Yehuda as well. David is marrying within Yehuda, and then Shaul sees, okay, David is building up his alliances with Yehuda. Well, yeah, he's from Yehuda. And as Shaul is going to try to counter that as well. Okay, take Michal away from David, give him to someone from Yehuda, according to others, who was actually from Binyamin. And so staying more within the tribe. So these are the different explanations that are given. And yes, we're supposed to be very, very bothered by the last scene, even though the marriage to Abigail is a very positive one. So it looks like, we see, yes, like Becky said, we're going to go back to this in the Batsheva and Uriah story. And Hadassah mentioned maybe Shaul is punishing Michal for backing David. Definitely. If we see it as Michal really still loves David. And by the way, it seems that she would, because when David demands her back, she goes, right? She doesn't put up a fight with Avner either. So that definitely seems to show that she still loves David. And this is really Shaul punishing her or punishing David. And the get al Tnai is what Becky's bringing up. That's right, that there is going to be an idea of, here we go, of any person who goes out to war giving a get just in case they die in war. And let's not forget that she is the mother of Amnon. We're going to see that according to the minority of positions of Chazal, but according to the majority, she's not. But we're going to see who the children are, right? Chazal say, well, then who was Amnon from? So we'll take a look at all this, and we'll see then David's children coming up very soon. But in the meantime, and in the last few minutes that we have, I just want to begin the very next perek. Perek Chava, Pasuk Aleph, Vayavo hazipim el Shaul hagevata limor halo David mistater b'gevata chachila al pnei hayishimon. And now we're so bothered. Wait a second. Now we're back to the David and Shaul stories. That was like such a nice, I'm going to say even respite over there. And now, by the way, we mentioned that this story almost like exists in a vacuum, right? Shmuel dies. David leaves his fortress by En Gedi and is going to end up going to the area of Carmel. And we said, or basically the areas of the Midbar, protecting the people of Carmel. And then comes this story. And we saw that, number one, he has to move because he's afraid that people are going to go to Shmuel's Levaya. But we also explained that it's important that the Navi tell us this. Maybe it's Shmuel's death that actually has this negative effect on David, that David, because Shmuel died, no longer has that moral fortitude and that he needs in order not to be killing. And therefore, Abigail kind of comes to replace Shmuel over here, which is remarkable. Right? Abigail,
so how did Shmuel write this if he's dead?
No, God did.
He doesn't. That's what we discussed at the very beginning, that these are Shmuel's students. Who are his students?
Oh.
We already know they're Gad and Natan. They're
God and Natan.
the top two graduates of Shmuel's Navi training school. So don't worry. Why do we still attribute it, or why do Chazal still attribute it to Shmuel? He didn't write it. He didn't. Meaning, even according to Chazal, he didn't. Meaning, they say Gad and Natan wrote it, but it's attributed to Shmuel because he was their teacher, he was their mentor, and the style, the writing style, right? Whether it's the plays on names, whether it's going to be different mishalim that are going to be incorporated, were clearly learned from Shmuel. Just like we're going to see, Micha quotes Yeshayahu. He's such a, that's the, I would say even the test or the, of a true student is someone who can imitate what his teacher does so well that you can't distinguish between the disciple and the mentor. So that's what's going on here in the continuation, all through the end, basically, of Sefer Shmuel. So what's going on here? Dikim, who, just to remind you, they're from the areas of Yehuda. And you remember in the previous story of the Zipim, it was right after Nov, and they were so scared that Shaul was going to kill. So yes, and they're the ones who told Shaul and about David being in their midst. And that's when, and just to bring us back to, Anna, here we go, 1 second, to Perek Chav Gimel. If you remember, in Perek Chav Gimel, when David went from Keilah, Perek Chav Gimel Pasuk Yudalid, Vayeshu David b'midbar b'mitzadot, Vayeshu Bahar b'midbar Ziv. Everyone knows Shaul is on the lookout for David. And that's where Yonatan apparently comes to meet him. And then Pasuk Yotev, and it seems almost the exact same terminology here in Perek Haba, and you're wondering, really, you're going to do this twice? I get it. Like right after Nov, you're afraid that Shaul is going to come get you if he hears that David is here. But after, it seems that Shaul went home, he cried. Do you remember this? And why go up to Shaul and say, oh, by the way, Shaul, we have David in our midst? So again, one can still say that they're still afraid of Shaul, but at the same time, the words are so familiar that we're wondering, is this really another story? Maybe it's really the same story as Perek Chav Gimel. So I'm going to leave you in suspense, but Ezrat Hashem to next week, and wish you all a Shavua Tov. And I'm very excited. I want to thank Eliza for the opportunity to not be rushed as we learn the last few prakim of Sefer Shmuel Aleph, basically till the end of Shaul's career, Be'ezrat Hashem, but this way we can continue learning for the next few weeks. And I would say in the right way, with sending you the Marmakomo Be'ezrat Hashem in advance, and we can really learn these prakim together in a both thoughtful and thought-provoking and inspiring manner. So Eliza, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay well, everybody.
Shani, Yashikara, thank you.
Thank you. Stay well.
Willing to continue. And yes, I'm supposed to end early.
Eliza, I can't hear anything. I don't know if anyone else can.
Right, Eliza, it's on mute.
It's on mute. We can't hear her. We can't hear Batya.
Hey, Eliza.
I want to tell you just how proud I am of our community and of our board. During this Corona period has been really an exceptional upsurge in consuming Torah. In ein kemach, ein Torah, and board is our community love to eat. But what's really special is that our community also loves to consume Torah. During this period, the board has been absolutely exceptional in providing programs before Pesach, before Yom Yerushalayim, before Shavuot. There was an increase in participation, and all of that was offered for free. Regular ongoing classes continue to exist and continue to grow, and participants and enjoying keeping ourselves rooted in our values and in Torah. And no one expects to eat for free, and certainly nobody can expect that everybody will be producing these top quality classes at no cost. So I'm turning to you now. There's a 200,000 shekel Magabit campaign, which is being run right now, which will cover some of the expenses which are necessary to continue to provide an excellent meal. So I'd like to ask you to send in your donation today and consider it as part of your portion towards the next meal. Kol Tov, and we'll continue to meet in the Beit Midrash as we put our values where we really want them to be.
Hi. As you all know, I'm a member of the Amutah for the Women's Bet Midrash. I say, unfortunately, most people have already left. We should have mentioned beforehand that the annual fundraising campaign that we do usually earlier in the year, we are now running. We put it off because of the corona and the fact that a lot of people were going through difficult times. But at the same time, we feel that it's very important that everybody who enjoys and partakes of the shiurim and the events and the Yemei Yun that the Women's Bet Midrash run should try and give as much or as little as they can to help us continue running everything that we'd like to run. We already have in place a fantastic year to come, not just our regular shiurim with additions, as you know, but also we're hoping to run things in the northern communities in Efrat, in the Tamar and the Dagan for younger women to expand the Women's Bet Midrash. We have all sorts of other events planned. And of course, everything costs money. So we would all really appreciate however much or however little that you can give, that you please help out and help us build the Women's Bet Midrash and that it may get stronger and stronger. Thank you very much. I see on the screen that Elisa has shared how you can donate. There are other ways as well. If you'd like to give a small monthly amount, that can be organized. You could contact myself or Elisa, and everything you give is really greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Jackie. Thank you. And yes, I just want to corroborate how important it is to continue with these phenomenal activities and learning endeavors of the Women's Beit Midrash. So Yasher Kochech, Jackie, and to all of you, Be'ezrat Hashem, for participating and in whatever ways we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Shani, and thank you again for our wonderful shiur.